Hello and welcome to the Being Human podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Bottaro, and today I am recording this from a little remote office in Ave Maria, Florida. I am visiting with some friends, doing some work at the university, and enjoying some warm weather instead of being in Connecticut for the month of January, and I am enjoying it. My family are enjoying it here with me, and it's a really wonderful place. It's a fascinating place. It's got its own story of growth and development that I think uh, warrants maybe a whole nother podcast to kind of look at and break down and see what's happened here over the years. But it's got me thinking a lot about growth and development and phases of iteration. And so today I'm going to break open some really difficult realities when it comes to growth and development. And this is a key to understanding all of our lives, how to grow, how to become better versions of ourselves. We know that's our goal, but do we know how to attain that goal? We get stuck in ruts, we hit walls, we get frustrated, and then we have this nasty little bugger of a defense mechanism, which of course we can have compassion and understanding towards, but at the end of the day, it's keeping us from the greatness God has made us for, and that is avoidance. So I want to, and that's, by the way, only one of a few of these really sticky and really effective defense mechanisms that can get in the way of our growth. Today, I'm going to break these open, talk about I'm going to share a little bit of what's going on in my life personally and ways that I've been dealing with these things as they've been coming up and some of the phases of growth that I'm at and that we're at in the Catholic Psych Institute and things like that you might find interesting. Hopefully you can apply it to your own life, and I think you'll be able to see the connections here. I pray that this is a blessing for you in your own life as well. Enjoy.
I spent the last 10 years learning how to help people using the best techniques available in psychology integrated with the Catholic faith. Now we've figured out that there's a better way to help people than just slapping a Catholic label on the same secular model of therapy you find anywhere else. The real question is, how will we make this shift to a new model of truly Catholic accompaniment, keeping the psychological sciences in mind while opening up to a more human and more effective approach? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I take you behind the scenes of what this new model looks like, using recorded audio from sessions working with my team, with colleagues, and even directly with clients. My name is Dr. Greg Bottaro, and I want to welcome you to the Being Human podcast.
All right, so a couple months ago, we decided, as we do every year or so as a company and team, to bring in some outside help and get some outside perspective on how things are going for us. And I think this is a an underappreciated process that shows up in almost every dimension of life. A lot of people turn to coaching now. Like, coaching is a big thing, but if you play sports, obviously coaching is really important. If you're an executive coaching is really important. People do nutrition coaching and all sorts of other things. There are certain pockets where it's becoming a better known approach to growing in your life. We've also had, forever in the church, we've had the tradition of spiritual direction. What's spiritual direction if not a kind of coaching? It's having somebody who's outside of your interior system, taking a look at your interior system in order to give you feedback, support, challenge, maybe sometimes insight, things that you will miss on your own. And this is really necessary. Obviously, the entire world of psychotherapy and everything that we're doing requires this outsider perspective, somebody who's on the outside looking in, bringing a certain level of expertise, of training, of skill, insight, of maybe grace to your process of what's going on the interior. If we are left to our own devices entirely, we will necessarily have blind spots. And this is not to carry a narrative of doubt and distrust. I think there's too much emphasis in our church on doubting yourself and not trusting yourself. Sometimes in the past, I think, and even some of the saints have quotes maybe taken out of context sometimes, that we're supposed to have this fundamental aversion towards anything that we desire or how we think, how we feel. And it really creates a suspicion of self, which, while understandable on many levels, I don't think brings us to the real depths of truth and who God created us to be. And at the same time, we can benefit from having other people on the journey with us. This is really at the core of accompaniment. This is what's really so important. And having this trained expert spending time and focusing energy on you and figuring out what's going on in your interior. So we do this regularly as a business at the Catholic Psych Institute. This is really significant and really important for our growth as a company. And in a lot of ways, the way that I've built Catholic Psych, I've just utilized principles that I find to be important from my own personal life, from spiritual life and spiritual growth and personal growth. Things that I've learned from my time with the Franciscans. I've learned from spiritual direction myself, from therapy myself, from growing in my own educational development and schooling. Things I've learned in marriage, which is its own world of self-development and personal development. And I like to bring those things into the business that I've built with Catholic Psych Institute. And I'd say the most perduring, consistently effective, helpful, and challenging and difficult aspect and dimension of this growth is having somebody from the outside spending time looking at what we're doing on the inside. So I don't count on just all of my own brilliance to know exactly what to do with Catholic Psych. And honestly, anytime that I do count on myself, we suffer greatly because of it. We limp along. We don't execute on things as well as we could. And we miss certain things that are difficult to really see. Now, why is that? Before I really kind of break this open, I want to take a minute to just look at why do we have blind spots? And if you can understand why we have blind spots, then you will understand and expect why you necessarily have blind spots, and you can appreciate your own blind spots and appreciate just the very existence of having these blind spots. Well, really, we can sum it up in general, as a defense mechanism. And what's a defense mechanism? Well, if you suffer a wound, you develop a callus, you build a scab over a cut or a wound. Well, that's a defense mechanism. Thank God. Thank God we have a way to get calluses, a way to get scabs, a way for there to be a sort of inner momentum towards self-protection. And if you really look deeper, it's like this really points out a movement towards life, a dynamism towards maintaining life, a survival instinct that's built into every living system. And so we can unpack this for years in terms of psychological defense mechanisms and the ways that all of the diagnosable psychological experiences can be seen as defense mechanisms. There are things we develop over time to protect against environments that are either harmful or we perceive for some reason in some way to be harmful. So again, when we're working with people and looking at these defense mechanisms and helping people to see these blind spots, we start off with great reverence. We say, thank God. Thank God for these things. Thank God for the immune system that you'll have a fever when there's a virus to protect your system from becoming completely demolished by the virus. The fever, your fever will increase, even though it's uncomfortable. It'll kill off the pathogens. So that's the way we see all these things. A fever or a defense mechanism can be in the form of a kind of avoidance. In other words, if there's something really devastating, really unsettling, really disorienting, why do you need to be looking at it every day? It's there, especially if there's a sense that there's nothing you can do about it. And again, it doesn't matter if that's true and real or not. If it's perceived that there's nothing you can do about it, then why would you spend every day looking at it? We have built-in factors, built-in mechanisms that will cause us to ignore, avoid, walk away from, not pay attention to certain things in our life that could be really a waste of our energy or time or be more harmful than good. And so we can, avoid those things and they become our blind spots. So if we continue along our path and never get somebody else from the outside to help us look in and see these blind spots, we will miss them until the day we die. It's my belief that purgatory is essentially having all of the scales lifted, all the filters removed, all of the blind spots made visible. When Jesus made the blind see, and he gave the disciples the healing power to help the blind see. I think about this all the time because we all are blind in some ways. We all have personalities that have developed blind spots. And whether we're always happy, always cheerful, maybe always joking, always minimizing big, heavy, difficult problems, maybe always finding something else to do. Maybe in some ways, ADD can be a form of this. There's always, we change our perspective from one thing to another. Or maybe we are always finding something wrong to complain about. What's your MO? What's your personality style? I promise you that there are elements of this that are defense mechanisms that you've built up over time to protect yourself against the perceived waste of energy or time or success of paying attention to things that are maybe too difficult to know what to do with. Maybe you're really grumpy. Maybe you're really angry. Maybe you're really aggressive. Maybe you shut people down who offer you criticism. Maybe you turn inwards. Maybe you're really silent and quiet and so-called quote unquote introverted. You see, there's a reason why a lot of these personality tests, these personality temperaments, these personality styles are not really the sort of work of psychology to find sort of validated criteria around. They're very popular. They're very interesting. They're fascinating. Sometimes people really enjoy and can find a lot of help from understanding their particular personality style. But here's the thing, it's not your identity. And they're really not all that static. So there might be a reason why a person develops a sense of a personality profile or pattern of introversion, which is a kind of avoidance. And maybe they're actually called to grow through that. And if somebody gives them perspective to see their blind spots and what they're actually avoiding, then they'll become less introverted. Now, it doesn't mean they're never going to be in a place where they don't find any comfort in that alone time or interior space, but they'll become less dependent and attached on it to it. And if you're an introvert listening right now, that probably sounds terrible. That's probably not anything you want to have anything to do with. But that's exactly the point. It's a challenge to grow. It's difficult. It's hard to grow. In the scripture, we have the refiner's fire. And we look at conversion as a difficult purification process. It's not meant to be easy. It can't be easy. But that's also why I think that's what purgatory is. Purgatory is when the scales fall, you see it all, and then you are forced to deal with things in a very immediate and very clear way. Well, it could be the same for somebody who's extroverted. You know, an extrovert maybe is avoiding some of the things that happen when they're alone in the quiet, in their interior. And maybe they love spending all this time out socializing and being with other people and having all this conversation. They could talk for hours and hours, because when it gets quiet and they're home by themselves and they're in the alone space, it starts to get a little uncomfortable. And again, maybe there's not a need for a radical shift away from being with other people, but maybe that's part of the growth pattern for that person. And we could do the same thing with all the temperaments, with all the personality styles, with all the strengths. If you're into strengths finders, you know, and all the numbers of the Enneagram and all these other systems that people are using now to understand their personality. But at the end of the day, we come up to this reality that every single one of us humans has blind spots. And the process of growing and becoming a better version of ourselves is a process of being shown blind spots in order to grow. Now, in this last round of our own process here, and as a company, we had a particularly good consultant come in, and she and her team put together reports on our whole company, and we've had these 2-hour assessment reviews in which it felt like one of the most excruciating experiences as a business owner and leader probably of the last 10 years. And this is why, because these are most of the things that are being brought up are things that, if I'm honest, somewhere in my heart of hearts, I know I've thought about, I've been presented with the reality of. And I'm, specifically talking about growth areas, those opportunities for growth. In other words, weaknesses, imperfections. And of course, any good consultant's going to build you up first and tell you all the good things. And there's lots of strengths there, and there's a lot of things we're doing well. And it's wonderful to get feedback on that as well from an outsider perspective, objectively. But then we hit these moments, these spots, these constructs and patterns of weakness and needs for growth. And it was very clear to me that there are ways in which I've been kicking the can down the road for the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, on some of the things that were coming up. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderfully terrible and terribly wonderful experience of going through these meetings, having this whole report laid out, because it's like, oh, such a refreshing clarity. Thank God for people like this who can do this for us. And thank God for the opportunity to see through the blind spots, to be given sight where before we were blind. And that's really what my encouragement is for you today, is especially we're still in the beginning of the year here in January. We're looking ahead at the new year, and we look for opportunities for growth. Hopefully every year you reconsider, and throughout the year you reconsider how to grow, and you can see opportunities for growth. And when you do, you will become continually a better version of yourself. This is a lifelong journey until the day we die, until our last breath. And then we have the fullness of opportunity for growth laid out before us in that purgatorial purgative kind of experience, whatever purgatory actually looks like. But from now until then, we have this grace-filled, mercy-filled, slow development of incremental progress we can make as long as we're open to it and participating in it. Sometimes we don't have a choice, and people will throw it in our face, our blind spots, and they'll maybe not in a compassionate way make us aware of ways that we're not the best version of ourselves. But I think it's easier and more effective when you go out actively seeking it. If we hit a certain difficulty as a business, we have something gets messed up with delivering our services, or we have some major complaint that comes up, or maybe we didn't cross all the T's and dot all the I's, and something comes around through some tax issue or legal issue, or it's like, those are not the ways that you want to figure out what you weren't doing perfectly. But when you proactively seek assistance, guidance, evaluation, consultation, well, you get ahead of these issues. You learn what they are before everything hits the fan. So this is my encouragement to you, to be not afraid to go out into the dark, to go out into the depths, to cast out into the deep. And what that means first and foremost is to cast into your own depths. And get help. Get somebody from our team as a mentor. Get a priest as a spiritual director, as a regular confessor to get to know you better. If you are running a company, bring in a consultant, bring in outside help. In any situation, look for opportunities for growth. I've seen that here at Ave Maria. I think they've had a few iterations and phases of growth over the years. And it seems like because they keep picking themselves up, trying to go to that next stage, trying to brush off the learning pains, the growth pains, and sort of, when you start something brand new, it's not going to be perfect right off the bat. And really, that's a lesson for all of us. We're never perfect. So we have to actually have what they call the beginner's mind, to be reapproaching things with a kind of purity of heart and a kind of humility, to say, Lord, what am I missing right now? How can I grow? How can I get to know myself better in these blind spots? Maybe there are important ways that I've been defending against something really super difficult, but maybe I'm ready to approach those things now instead. And if I have some clarity and sight in those blind areas, then maybe there's some significant growth that I can open myself up to. This should be a lifelong process. Doesn't matter if you're 40, 60, 85 years old. In fact, in my experience, the older men and women that I've known in my life are as they've advanced in wisdom along with their age, they've also advanced in humility. And it's like they learn over and over again with more proximity to this fact that we need to continue to grow. So let's not stop growing together. So pray for us as we're undergoing this audit right now. And that's a big scary word, but if we cause the audit, it's a good thing. Call it a review if you want. When it's forced on you from outside, that's when it's maybe too late, and that's when it gets kind of scary. But if you initiate it and get ahead of the curve, then it's also going to be delivered with more space, more time, more freedom, more compassion, more mercy. And then we can actually grow in a way that is not entirely unsettling and too uncomfortable. Okay, like I said, pray for us. I'm praying for you in your growth for this year. Reach out to us if we can help you in any way. And otherwise, keep us in your prayers as we are keeping you in ours. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to the Being Human podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to help us spread the word and hear more, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review, and subscribe, as it really helps us to get our content out to more people. Be sure to listen next time as I take you deeper into what it means to be human. If you want more free content and information about what we do at the Catholic Psych Institute, head on over to CatholicPsych.com. God bless you.